By my watch, it's 4 o'clock, so we are going to get started. We have there's a lot I want to share with you. This webinar should last about 30 minutes, and I want to try and keep us on schedule, on time. So again, welcome. My name is Valerie Howe, and I am a customer success specialist with D2L. In my former life, before I became a D2Ler, I taught for 5 years. So for 3 years, I was teaching across the pond in jolly old England, and I taught high school English there. And then I came back to Canada, and I taught for 2 years in Northern Alberta, and I taught grade 4 there. So I'm really, really excited to be here with you today to give you a bit of an introduction to assessments in Brightspace. I've added my Twitter handle below. I like to post tips and tricks, tool updates, and as well as upcoming events like the webinars that we're having this week. Before we get started today, there are a few housekeeping items that I want to cover. First, I know depending on where we live, we might refer to different things. I know some of the folks on the line might refer to where they work as or who they work for as being a school board. For some people, it might be a division, but we do have folks from all over North America joining us today. So we're just going to stick with the term district to represent those bodies. Second, all commenting and Q&A has been disabled, as you may have noticed, and it will be disabled for the webinar series. The reason for that, it's not that we don't want to answer your questions, it's just that, again, as I said, this webinar series is open to all K-12 educators who have access to Brightspace across North America. And because we only have a short time together, we don't have the capacity to answer specific questions about your district. So instead, we really encourage you to reach out to your Brightspace administrator if you have any questions, or we've also put an email up, k12ont@d2l.com. If you have any questions, feel free to send them there. Third, due to a large volume of folks currently discovering the webinars kind of midweek and having missed the opportunity to register for our earlier webinars, which again is a great thing. We're happy that folks are finding out about them, but because of that, we'll now only be sending out one email that will have all of the recordings and all of the slide decks from our entire series. And you can expect to find that early next week. We're going to be emailing it to the email that you used to register. So be sure to check your junk inbox or your spam folder just in case. However, in the meantime, for folks who want to access these resources right away, we are going to be posting the recordings and the slide decks on the education webinar site that you went to register as they become available. So feel free to head there. The recordings and slide decks should be up the next business day following the webinar series. So for example, the resources from the webinar right now should be on that website at some point tomorrow. And feel free to share those out with your fellow educators if they could not attend. And finally, if your district isn't currently using Brightspace, feel free to follow along. However, the webinar is meant more so for folks who have access to it through their district, not for folks looking how their district can get access to it. So if you're interested, again, just shoot us an email at k12ont@d2l.com. Alrighty, now let's look at today's agenda. For some people who are with us on the line, the next few slides might be a bit of a refresher, but we do have some new folks joining us for the very first time today, and we want to make sure that everyone attending these webinars gets the same information and resources. So we are going to recap our current state and what is Brightspace, and then I'm going to flip into a live demonstration where we can look at creating an assignment, creating a rubric, give you a really quick intro to the quiz tool, and then we'll cover some handy resources at the end. Okay, so as my colleagues who presented earlier this week before me mentioned, I just really want to emphasize that we are here to help. We know that it's a very tumultuous and a stressful time right now as we all start to plan and think about what this looks like moving forward. And this is something that is, as we know, happening all over the world. And D12 actually has K-12 districts that we support globally. So we are hearing different stories across the globe. And as we hear more, we'll be sure to share more so that you can benefit from the lessons and the stories of other people. The webinar series will evolve over time. And as that happens, we'll be updating our information and sharing more resources. But again, I really do want to emphasize that we are in this together. And with that being said, online learning can certainly be a very valuable tool in a time like this, but there are some things that we need to take into consideration. So I just want to take a quick moment to share with you considerations that we're hearing from our K-12 districts around the world as they transition to online learning. So first up is content and resources. So whether you are experienced with delivering learning online and sharing resources to your students online, or if you're starting completely from scratch, both are totally fine, but being able to pull together and share those resources and content for your learners is going to be really important, especially in these fast-moving times. So finding a platform that allows you to pull all those resources together in one place for your students to best support their home navigation of the content is really crucial. And if you so choose it, I'm happy to say that Brightspace can be that place for you. Devices and internet access. Again, online learning is a really valuable resource, especially in a time like this, but as educators, we do need to think about our students without internet, or what their device situation might be like at home. So for those learners who have older devices or computers at home, we want to make sure that we're not focusing too much on apps that might rely on having the newest operating systems or the latest and greatest devices, as we know that not all of our students are working with the latest and greatest devices at home. So Brightspace, for example, uses responsive web design and offline content to ensure that learners can access materials from anywhere. So all they need is a device that will give them access to a browser to be able to access the content you're putting into Brightspace. And I am just absolutely blown away and loving the stories that we are hearing about communities pulling together in this time of trouble to really support their community. So for example, we're hearing about some areas who are organizing donations of old technology to share amongst the community. We're hearing of, districts that are organizing drive-through tech pickups, organizing free Wi-Fi hotspots, or even internet. So again, it's really nice to see that we're all coming together as a community to take care of the children and their learning within our community. And thinking again of support at home, parents and guardians are also in this new world that they're trying to navigate and juggle all their responsibilities, including work. So for some of those folks, that's either now transitioning to working at home themselves, or maybe they're still going to their places of employment and supporting their children at the same time. So we do want to make sure that we're thinking of parents and guardians and the support that they can provide, and that we're choosing online tools that can communicate with them easily and allow that content and support to be easily accessible. When we think about accessibility and equity, we want to be looking for online tools and thinking about if they meet the needs of all learners. So again, tools like Brightspace that are WCAG compliant mean that they can be used with screen readers and lots of other assistive technologies to help those students. And in our ever growing digital world, we know that security, privacy, and personal information is something that we definitely need to keep front of mind. So if we're asking students to use online tools, we want to make sure that their data is protected. So tools like Brightspace that have a license with your district have been properly vetted and can offer reassurance. I also want to make really clear that D2L also never owns student or teacher content. So just something that's good to point out. And last but not least, synchronous versus asynchronous learning. So having synchronous lessons where all of your students are working together at the same time like they would in the traditional classroom, maybe through using a video conference tool, is really awesome. But we do need to keep in mind that some households might only have one device that the children are sharing and can't all have access to at the same time. So also providing an online lesson plan that includes asynchronous learning, so resources and materials that you're sharing that students can access at different times in the day when they're able to use that technology, as well as physical activity breaks and household schedules is really important. Okay, so while today we are going to focus on the technology, I also know that we're definitely keeping an eye out for educational resources that are being shared to help educators and students at this time. So I just want to share a couple here that, again, you will have access to in the slide deck. These will all be clickable links for you. And we're just seeing some really great stuff. So our favorites from this week include districts, universities, and education companies that are sharing resources to help, again, both educators and students with how they're going to transition to this new reality of learning from home. And again, before we get into the assessment part of today, I do just want to start by, again, especially for folks who are new on the line, starting off making sure that we're all on the same page with a couple of names that you may have heard floating around, as we do get some questions about this. So firstly, D2L is the company that makes our learning platform Brightspace. And if you've been on some of our other webinars, you've heard that we like to use the Apple analogy. So Apple is the company, and one of the products that they make is the iPhone. So D2L is the company, and Brightspace is our product. You may have also heard this term Brightspace community being used, and this is a really, really great resource where you can find articles and information about Brightspace tools. And we also have some COVID-19 specific resources to help you that are located within the Brightspace community. And again, we've linked that towards the end of the slide deck in the resources slide. Okay, so we've already crossed two things off of our agenda, and we are now going to head into a live demonstration. Some of our learning objectives for this will be being able to create a new assignment, adding information and resources to your assignment, being able to create a rubric, sharing that assessment information with your students, and then we'll take a really quick look at how to create a quiz. So I'm just going to pop into a course here. Okay, so I'm in here as Miss Secondary Educator, and before we get going, I just want to say if this is your first time tuning in and you're looking for information about how to access your course or how to navigate your Brightspace instance, then please head to that education webinar site and check out our Getting Started webinar recording, because that will give you a lot of great tips and tricks and show you how to get going and how to find your courses. I do also want to share that I view today as really more so of a part one of two webinars. So today we're going to cover how you can create an assignment in Brightspace. And then tomorrow we're going to have a really great webinar that's going to talk about how you can provide really great feedback after your students have completed the assignment that you learn how to make today. So again, in the Getting Started with Brightspace webinar that my coworker Adam did, he showed you that through the activity feed, there is a way that you can make an assignment. However, this is really, really great if you just really want a simple kind of folder or Dropbox for students to put their work into, but it does have some limited functionality. So I want to take you to our assignments tool to show you how you can get more of that robust functionality. And again, your nav bar may look different to mine. That's totally okay, but we're looking for a tool that says assignments. It might also say Dropbox in your environment. Some districts go with that. Okay, so now I'm in my assignments area, and One thing that I want to just call out quickly is that I am able to make categories to help organize my assignments. So you can see I have a writing category here. I also have a poetry category. So this is totally up to how you want to organize your assignments, or maybe you have an idea of something that falls in line with your district's assessment policy, but it is possible to do this. So this could just as easily be Unit 1, Unit 2, whatever works for you and your students. And I can create and edit categories here, but I can also create and edit a category when I make a new assignment as well. So I think we're going to head into our new assignment. So when I click the new assignment, it's going to take me into the area where I can make a new assignment. And as you're about to see, there are a lot of choices when you go to make an assignment. However, in my humble opinion, not all of them are necessary to get started, to just get something out to your students so that you can start assessing their learning. So I'm going to call out the things that I think are the most important when you're just trying to get up running off the ground. So under this properties tab, I can make a name for my assignment. So I'm going to call this creative writing. Oops. Prompt. And then you can see here, I have an area for instructions. So this is where I can come and I can provide all of my assessment information for my students. So I might say, today we are going to do some creative writing. And then I can choose to organize this information however I would like. I can use bullet points to help with that, and so on and so forth. So I can start putting in what some of their success criteria or instructions are. But I also want to call out, in this HTML editor, you also have the ability to add lots of different multimedia. So here, I could insert an image if I wanted to. And I know when I was teaching, I had some creative writing prompt pictures that sometimes had a sentence starter with them, or sometimes they were just the image. And it was just kind of used to help get those creative juices flowing, especially for those who are a bit reluctant writers, or maybe they kind of struggle with that. So that's something that you could totally still do in your online environment, is insert that picture as kind of a prompt for your students. But we also have our very technical term, insert stuff button, but it's also a personal favorite of mine. So if I click that insert stuff button, you can see I get a lot of different options of what I can include. And I just want to call out two. So the first one is YouTube. By using insert stuff button and selecting YouTube, I can really easily search for and embed a YouTube video. So maybe there is a really good video that gave some instructions of what I want them to do, or some tips and tricks for this creative writing task. I could really easily embed that in there to help them. And again, that's going to play right in Brightspace, so we don't have to worry about them going out to YouTube and, potentially getting distracted by all of those YouTube videos that are available. And then the other is adding a video note. So Video Note is a fantastic tool. It's a personal fave of mine. Hello, everyone. And what this allows you to do is you could have written instruction, but you can also have some verbal instruction as well. So again, lots of different use cases for this. Maybe you're teaching a second language course and you want to give them some practice with their listening skills as well. Maybe you have some English language learners who would really appreciate having some of that verbal communication as well. And also, I know it's hard to believe, particularly for us secondary educators, but your kids are going to miss you. They're going to miss that personal interaction with you. So this is a really nice way that you can just have that kind of personal touch. They can hear your voice, they can see you, they can feel connected to you, even if you unfortunately can't be in the same area right now. So I'm going to cancel that for now because I'm happy with my written instruction. You also have an area here for attachments. So you can upload a file. So again, maybe you have a handout already that is tried and true. There is no point in reinventing the wheel, especially not at a time like this where we're all trying to think about our path forward. So really easily upload a file with instructions, or you can also connect to your Google Drive or your OneDrive. So again, no matter where you're storing your resources, you can really easily access them. Okay, so again, like I said, I'm not going to go over all of these options. I don't think they're all necessary when you're first getting started. They're things you might want to look at later down the road when you become a bit more comfortable with the tool. One thing that I am going to call out is our submission type. We have 4 submission types in D2L, and it gets me very, very excited. So this allows you to really make Brightspace your assessment hub. So with file submission, again, that's the typical kind of upload of a document. Your students can also connect to their Google Drive or their OneDrive. So again, wherever they're storing their work, they can really easily upload that. A text submission means that your students will be able to type right into that environment. So it will pop up a text box and they can type right in there. On paper and observed in person. Now, what is really great about these two is that they are designed to allow you to make use of our assessment tool and our feedback tools that are going to be covered in tomorrow's webinar, even if students are not submitting anything directly into Brightspace. So for example, maybe you are utilizing a video conferencing tool later and you're having students do some presentations. You could select the observed in person submission type and then still have all your assessment information, still have a rubric that you're marking off of, still having all their feedback and their grades in Brightspace. Again, even if the work they're doing is not in Brightspace. So it just really allows you to create this one hub that students know they can go to get all of their assessment information. This is where I can come and I can create a category and I can categorize my work. So I'm going to put this into my writing category. If I didn't have a category ready, I could just really easily create a new category. This is where I can say what it is out of to give them a bit of an idea about that. Here, I can make it a grade item. I'm not going to go into this today. This means that it would feed into our gradebook tool that we have in Brightspace. But again, we're going to have lots of documentation in our resource slides that will help you with this if this is something that you're looking at using. Okay, so now we get to the rubrics part, and I get very, very excited about this. So our rubrics tool is, I think, fantastic. So if I've already created a rubric, I can just add a rubric that I have made. I would click Add Selected, and I'd be good to go. Students would be able to see that rubric with their success criteria so that they know how they're being assessed and give them some ideas of how they can be successful on the assignment. If I didn't have a rubric made, I could click this and it's going to open my rubrics tool, and I'm going to take you there to the actual rubrics tool where you can also make rubrics from scratch in just a moment. If I scroll back up to the top, there's one more thing I want to show you here, and it's the restrictions tab. So if I click into this, this is where I can choose if the assignment is available right away for my students. And this is where I can come and choose when it's due. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a save and a close. And as you can see, it automatically came in hidden, but maybe I'm now ready for my students to see this. So I'm going to click the drop down box and I'm going to make it visible to users. Awesome. So now I'm going to head into my rubrics tool. And here you can see that I have one rubric here that I've already made, but now I need to make a new one. So I'm going to click New Rubric. And again, I absolutely love this tool. I get really jealous that I didn't have access to this when I was teaching because it would have saved me a lot of headaches. So this is where I can come in I can give my rubric a title. You can see here that it's going to auto-save, so I don't have to worry about losing any of my work. This is where I can, if it's published, that means students can see it. If I'm working on this here and there, I can also save it as a draft so that students cannot see it, but I just want to make sure that I come in and I make it published when I'm ready for students to see it. I can choose whether it's an analytic or a holistic rubric, if it's going to have points, or if it's going to be a text-only rubric. And if I don't like the way that the grading is showing, so my highest is here and my lowest level is here, I can really easily reverse that order. And one thing that is great about this tool is that it is a what you see is what you get editing style, which means it's click and type. So pretty much everything that you're seeing here is editable, excuse me. So I can change this terminology if I want something that better suits my students. I can adapt what the points for each level is. If I need an extra row, I can add it. If I need to delete that row, I can really easily do that. I can come in here and put in success criteria for them. So I can do that here. If I need a new criterion, I can really easily add it. It's going to automatically go to the bottom. If I don't need that, gone. I can easily delete it. And then in here, this is what I really love. So in my success criteria descriptors for my levels, I have a little mini HTML editor. So I can type, or again, I have this insert stuff button. So I can put audio-visual components into this. So I can put in an image, I can put a video note in here. So again, if I want or need my students to be able to hear the descriptions instead of just being able to read, or if I want both written description and a verbal description to help again with maybe English language learners or to help if you're teaching a second language class, I can really easily do that. The initial feedback box, this is where I know, again, when I was teaching, I found that depending on what level I was giving on a rubric, my feedback would be a bit repetitive. I might have a sentence starter that I was using really commonly. So I would be able to come and put that in here. But then when I go to give that feedback and mark my students' work, which you'll see in the webinar tomorrow, I can really easily that will pop up when I select that level, and I can edit that. So I really hope that when you have a moment, you come and give this a try, because again, I think it's absolutely fantastic. So before we get into the quiz tool, I just want to show how you can make this assessment really easily available to your students. So I'm going to head back to my course homepage, and your students can come to the assignments tool and find their assignments there. But if you want to make it a bit easier for them, I can also post that assignment in my activity feed. So again, I could do it like this, but now that I've already made an assignment, I can come in, I can select existing, and it's going to populate any of the information that I've put in there. I can choose if I want students to be able to comment and ask questions, and I can again decide if I want to post this right away or if I want to post this later. So maybe I'm doing some forward planning for the week. I can choose to post that later. I'm going to post it now. And I'm going to pin it to the top. So I know some of the educators that I've worked with or I've met at conferences, what they like to do is they will pin the next upcoming assignment to the top of the activity feed, just so that's really easy for students to access, and they'll leave it like that until the assignment has been completed, and then they can unpin. So as a teacher, I can see that 0 of my 3 students have submitted, but as a student, they're just going to see a big blue submit button, and it's going to take them right into that assignment. And I know we're going a little bit fast, but again, you are going to get the recordings and the slide deck so you can rewatch. I just really quickly want to go into my quiz tool here, because I think this is another really great way that you can get started with some assessments in Brightspace. So you can see I have one quiz here. I'm going to click into new quiz. And you can see I'm going to give it a name. And like the assignment, I can put it into a category. And if I don't have one, I can make one really easily. And before we get into adding quiz questions, I just want to head to restrictions for a moment. Because again, this is where you're going to choose if your students can see it right away or if it's going to be hidden until you want to share. I can come in and give it a due date. But one thing that's different than the assignments is that I have this option for timing. So I can give students a recommended time limit, which is going to show them, hey, this is how long I think it might take you to accomplish this quiz or complete it, just to help with their time management. Or I can give them an enforced time limit. So if this is a summative assessment, that might be an option that I want to do. So I'm going to head back to properties. And I'm going to go to add quiz questions. And it's going to ask me if I'm ready to start adding content. So I'm going to find this blue add button, click it, click new question, and then head to whichever one I want. And you can see there are a lot of options here. So I'm going to start with a multiple choice question. And if I had made a mistake, I can really easily come and choose a different one. On the left-hand side is what it looks like for the educator. And on the right-hand side, as I start building this out, it's going to give me a preview of how this might look for my students. So I need to put in my questions. So I might say, which of the following is a common symbol in chapter 1? You can see I have a mini HTML editor up here as well. So I can insert an image. Again, I can insert a video note or a YouTube video. And I also have an equation editor if that helps with the subject that I am teaching. I can come in here and put in some of my answers here. And again, you can see I have those components for my questions as well. Any question where it makes you put an answer means that the system can self-mark it. So we have quite a few where it can mark automatically. We have a couple that would require you to go in and mark it, like a long answer, for example. If I need another row, I can really easily add that. If I no longer need that, I can really easily exit. I can randomize the answers for each student so that they don't all appear in the same order. That way, you know, if a student is, you know, texting, they can't just say like, oh, like question two's a doozy, like it's answer 3 or something. Not perfect, obviously, but just an example of it'll just make sure it's not displaying in the exact same way for all students. I can also choose how much this is worth. And something else that I think is really great is we have options up here. So I can also add feedback to some of these. So maybe someone selects tree and I can have feedback here. And then if the student selects that answer, that feedback is automatically going to pop up for them without me having to do it. So again, just that kind of way of getting some instant feedback to the student. And I can also provide overall feedback for this question. Like, you know what, this one was a bit tricky. We're going to cover it tomorrow or the next day. When I come down to save, I have a couple options. If I do save and copy, it's going to save the previous question that I just did, but it's going to copy all of these fields for me. So maybe if I have, you know, something very similar that I'm going to ask and I don't want to have to retype everything, that's a good option, but I can still come and choose a different question. If I do save and new, it's going to save the previous question, but strip out all of that information. So again, really just depends on your workflow and what you're looking to do. I might turn this into a written response. So I can give them the question. So tell me about, you can obviously come up with something a little bit more creative than I have, but I want to point out that you can enable in the student answer the HTML editor for the student responses. So as you can see, that means they're going to have access to some of these multimedia options as well. So they can utilize video note if they would like, and they can upload an image if they would like. So some pretty good functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a save. And now I can see the questions that I've made. I can really easily drag and drop to edit them if I want them to appear in a different order. And if I made a mistake, it's really easy to just delete that. Okay, so as I said, that's a really quick introduction to our quiz tool. I am going to head back to our PowerPoint. So we have completed all of our learning objectives. I know we're running a little bit over, so I just want to make sure that I share some resources with you here. You can see that's the last thing that we need to cover. So again, I have linked some resources to our Brightspace community. We do specifically have some resources to help educators as they look towards forward planning in light of COVID. So that might be something you want to check out. I've also had a link to our Brightspace tutorials. We have loads and loads and loads of videos on there to help you. I've also linked to our VLE training videos. Now, these resources are Ontario based. In Ontario, the virtual learning environment is what Ontario calls Brightspace. But aside from the terminology of Brightspace versus the VLE being a bit different, those are really amazing videos, so very useful for everyone. And again, we do have another set of webinars tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll be providing rich and descriptive feedback. You can register for that at the Education Webinar website. And again, all of these previous ones that have completed will be available on that Education Webinar site. There will be a part where you can say watch now and access slides, and we'll be sending that in an email to the email you used to register early next week. If you are hungry for more, I will also let you know that this is going to be again in that slide deck that you're going to have access to. Anything that is underlined links to a Brightspace tutorial video. But I do want to note that this is not organized by basic to advanced. It's I guess you could say it's more so kind of pedagogically themed. So what you're looking to try and do with your students is here. So communication and collaboration, we have some suggestions for how you organize course materials, for documenting student learning, and as well for feedback and assessment. Okay, so I'm sure I'm not the only person in this webinar who likes seeing a completed checklist, and I would hate to rob anyone of that satisfaction. So here we go. We have covered all of our items to get started with assessments in Brightspace. And I just really want to, again, thank everyone for joining us here today. As I know I mentioned in the beginning, it's a bit of a stressful time as we all think about how we're going to plan and help with learning at home as we move forward in this new environment. But I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Thank you again so much. Stay safe, stay well, have an absolutely wonderful day.